Greetings, this is Joe Kalinowski of Trilogy Associates, a management consulting firm located in the Research Triangle region of North Carolina. My presentation today is about yielding better outcomes from your tech transfer efforts. One excellent way to do that is to pay more attention to the demand side of the equation throughout the tech transfer process. For some of you, I may be preaching to the choir. Others may find my suggestions radical or even infeasible. However, in my view, these principles will inevitably lead to greater commercial success for your TTO and for your institution. Many tech transfer offices assess market needs only after a technology itself has been vetted or only after an industry prospect has exhibited potential interest. This approach, while common, is short-sighted. A more comprehensive approach will yield greater commercial success in the long term. I'll demonstrate how to make this happen within your own organization. I trained as an electrical engineer and enjoyed a career in several industries and several roles within those industries. The common threads in my career have been technology development and business development. I founded Trilogy Associates in 1989. Its name is derived from the confluence of markets, technologies, and business development. I've personally worked as a consultant and advisor to industry, to innovators, and to investors. I'll provide some contact information when we're done. Here are the topics I plan to cover today to convince you that your tech transfer processes can be improved. My presentation will take about 35 minutes. There are two fundamental drivers of the commercial value of intellectual property: the technologies themselves and the markets they might serve. TTOs do a pretty good job at assessing the technologies that are offered to them, considering the resource constraints that are in play. But their assessments of market demand, if conducted at all, are often inadequate. TTOs tend to rely too much on their own innovators and their prospective industry partners for estimates of demand. Academic researchers tend to overestimate demand because they overestimate applicability and sometimes have a poor handle on economic viability. Industry reps are generally better informed about demand, but they often intentionally underestimate demand to bolster their negotiating positions. Who would argue against the need for rigorous technology assessment? Of course, nobody would. But I also argue that rigorous market assessment often gets short shrift and is often conducted too late in the tech transfer process. Earlier demand estimates can lead to much more successful outcomes. A successful outcome can mean more accurate valuation, including the possibility of a greater negotiated valuation. It can also mean the quick dismissal of a subpar technology, thereby saving time and resources. TTOs need to manage their relationships with these three entities. Every one of those relationships is challenging. I think innovators in industry each exert too much influence on most tech transfer offices. And I maintain that product users generally attract the least attention, if at all. I suggest that a better balance among the three influences is a good thing. Specifically, I prescribe a greater leadership role for the TTO, a leadership role derived from in my view, better TTO relationships and a higher TTO profile will inevitably lead to greater tech transfer success in the long run. Is the value of these changes conceptually obvious? Well, yes. Are they easily implemented? Certainly not. Are the results worth it? You bet. Look, I realize that enhancing the TTO's profile will be challenging. Such a change faces organizational, political, and budgetary challenges. But the pain is worth it over the long term. Your institution will benefit economically, and its reputation will be enhanced. As you well know, these three entities are motivated by different outcomes. The industry motivator is obvious: profit. Innovators respond primarily to academic status, although money can sometimes play a substantial role. Users don't care about your technology, and they really don't care about the resulting product. They just want to get stuff done. It's essential to keep these three different motivations in mind at all times and to respond accordingly. Think of these three entities as your separate clients, each with different aspirations and different kinds of knowledge to impart. The innovator relationship is the most intimate for obvious reasons. Innovators are typically much more engaged in the lab than they are focused on commercialization, especially early on in the process. I believe a TTO's ability to independently productize a technology is incredibly important. The most appropriate product to be derived from a technology is not always obvious. Consider one extreme productizing example that we encountered. We were asked to identify partnering opportunities for a new technology for producing small diameter metal tubes that find wide usage in medical devices. You can guess that there are many kinds of products employing such miniature tubes. In fact, we discovered about 20 applicable products along with their various suppliers, all addressing different clinical needs. While the cumulative market opportunity was indeed very attractive, identifying the best partnering opportunities required an extensive productization exercise. The relationship with industry is typical and well understood. However, industry cannot represent user needs unless and until a product concept exists and resulting user views are collected. Therefore, you should not rely exclusively on industry to accurately reflect market needs. You must remember that product users drive demand, hence technology valuation. They offer a unique perspective on potential products, but only if a non-existent product can be made real for them. Talking to users about raw technologies is not very productive, so you must translate for them. In my experience, few TTOs maintain relationships with product users. While this situation is understandable, it's a real shortcoming. Here again, we see the importance of productizing a technology in order to make it real and relevant to users. Research conducted with even a small sample of users can offer great benefit, even in early technology screening, as long as you can present them with a tangible solution. Okay, let's step back a bit to examine the entire tech transfer process. I call this first approach the push strategy because it pushes technologies out to industry. This process is very common and is followed in one form or another by all TTOs. I'm sure you recognize these shorthand steps and you follow all or most of them. I won't belabor this strategy because you are already familiar with it. However, I do suggest that you modify your push protocol by assessing market demand as early as possible in the process. This implies that you'll need to do substantial homework even before you identify potential licensees. Hear what the market has to say early on. This alternative is what I call the pull strategy. It pulls market needs from enlightened industry reps and from product users, translates them into technology needs, and attempts to influence your innovators in their directions of research. It is seldom employed by TTOs today. However, in my view, it can be incredibly powerful in uncovering untapped value from academic research. In some ways, it mimics a strategy often employed in industry-sponsored research. This approach complements the more common push strategy. The most challenging step is to optimally choose appropriate industries, target companies, and target product users after you assess the fundamental capabilities of your own research staffs. This pull strategy is clearly a longer-term strategy because some adjustments within your research teams eventually may be needed. And you can expect some resistance from these research folks along the way. To be more specific, here are the activities required of TTOs to implement a successful pull strategy. First, you must understand the essential capabilities of your various groups of innovators. Second, you must extract market knowledge from the associated target industries and users served by those industries. Third, you must translate identified market needs into targeted research directions and convince your innovators to march in those directions. This third step is the most difficult for two reasons. First, it requires certain TTO capabilities that I call mapping skills. Second, some pushback from your innovators is likely, as they may find such directional advice to be both unfamiliar and counterintuitive. Sensitive negotiations are likely to be required. This notion of mapping is very important. The TTO must be capable of mapping market needs to technologies, just as it must be able to map innovations to markets. If these mapping capabilities are absent, tech transfer will be at best suboptimal if it does not fail altogether. Your TTO must either have adequate mapping skills on staff, or it must reach out to exploit them. Once your institution's technology capabilities are broadly understood, you can begin to identify broadly applicable markets and engage the mapping skills you need. Here's an example of mapping as part of a classical push strategy. We were engaged by a nation-sponsored European tech transfer entity attempting to license out a novel, light-activated, antimicrobial coating technology. It quickly became obvious that the number of potential applications was huge. So where to focus our efforts? The collected wisdom of many market domain experts was brought to bear in order to identify the best industrial prospects. This allowed us to focus our partnering efforts on a handful of high potential initiatives. These are my key takeaway messages today. Your results will improve if you engage both strategies, maintain your focus on the demand side of the tech transfer equation, and patiently apply both principles. There's no strictly defined protocol. The details of each initiative will dictate specific steps in each case. But I think these principles are sound. Now let's switch gears and address paths to market awareness. When do you need it, and how do you attain it? Here I explain when it comes in handy. Simply put, it's useful, I would claim essential, in all these pivotal TTO activities. Although I'm a technologist by training, I've discovered the importance and means of acquiring market knowledge in our own tech transfer services to innovators, academics, investors, and corporate clients. We are often asked by either a corporate client, an investor, or an academic researcher or TTO to obtain or develop market knowledge that's relevant to a particular technology. In each case, our findings have the same basic content. Whenever we work on behalf of an innovator or TTO, our findings are always enlightening. Inevitably, a clarifying dialogue results, one which helps to ground the innovator's perceptions of best fit applications and potential market value. Those dialogues always have a favorable impact on the innovator-TTO relationship. This chart is my summary of the sources of market knowledge that you will find most reliable to address each of 4 TTO objectives. All 4 sources bring value, but let's focus on the shortcomings. Innovators are notoriously deficient in sizing business opportunities. They inevitably overestimate them, and they tend to come up short in assessing market demand. On the other hand, users are unlikely to identify all the appropriate potential licensees that should be considered. As a matter of standard practice, you should consider all these sources and determine which ones will best meet your needs for due diligence in every case. As you no doubt already know, one gains market knowledge by conducting market research. I prefer the term investigation and research, that is INR, to emphasize its analytical component. As long as your own staff is capable and can remain unbiased, they can conduct much of the INR activity themselves. If and when necessary, you can reach out to exploit available external capabilities. In my experience, the depth of INR activities to support tech transfer can often be less than that to support other commercialization activities, such as detailed product planning and design specification. This is good news since TTO budgets and staff availability are typically, and unfortunately, quite limited. So what kinds of questions might you be asking industry as part of my pull strategy? These are some examples of pointed questions to ask industry reps and key opinion leaders. The full list is likely to be substantially longer. But don't ignore open-ended questions. What opportunities do you see? What changes are in the works? What would allow your company to grow dramatically? What's the biggest single problem you face today? All these are good icebreakers. You can expect some proprietary limits to the conversation, but your goal should be maintaining a trusting relationship. These are some examples of pointed questions to ask users of existing products relating to the technologies of interest. Again, the full list is likely to be substantially longer. Not all users will be easy to identify, and some won't be forthcoming. However, the greater the pain, the more willing they will be to cooperate. Online surveys become feasible with these folks, and that method can be very economical. The challenges will be, number one, identifying products that relate in some way to your innovator's research capabilities. Number two, identifying qualified users of those products. And number three, recruiting their participation. These INR methods and targets are likely familiar to you. Two kinds of targets: routine users and key opinion leaders, that is KOLs, deserve special attention. Product users are seldom tapped, yet their insights can be pivotal. If they are not conflicted, KOLs are often insightful, but they must be carefully identified, actively recruited, and adequately compensated. Proper choices of methods are important. I tend to favor in-depth interviews for tech transfer related research. The numbers of such encounters need not be large, say 5 to 25 interviews for each product category, as long as your interview targets are prudently chosen. Here are the three methods that I favor for tech transfer INR work. All can be quite appropriate, and the choices depend upon the nature of the data to be gathered, that is, qualitative versus quantitative, and the acceptable costs and calendar time. Here's a generic description of an INR inquiry. Nothing cast in stone here. Lots of variability is possible. You need to fit the process to your particular objective, both in terms of content and required depth. Obviously, you should short-circuit the process when you encounter strongly negative vibes in response to a product concept. You should expect to fail early and often. As you know, that comes with the territory. Don't discount the importance of any of your relationships. Achieving a leadership role in each one won't be easy, but it will be well worth it. Your ability to influence the research directions of your innovators is perhaps the most important for long-term commercialization success. Delicate dialogue and negotiation will be essential. Recognize the realities of human nature and the real world. Leverage them. Demonstrate to your research staffs how accommodating to your guidance will enhance their personal profiles within your institution. Consider adding my pull strategy to your toolbox. Work to effectively influence your innovators, but respect their need to evolve as necessary. Your industry contacts will appreciate and respect your interest in learning about their long-term needs. You probably know this already, but you need to formalize INR as part of your tech transfer processes. This can be as simple as outlining a required stepwise protocol for each TTO activity, a checklist as it were. Connecting technologies to feasible, demanded applications matters a great deal to make them real to users. This capability requires both technology understanding and market awareness. Here's an interesting example. We were asked to discover commercially viable applications for a software system for rapid eye tracking. It turned out that monitoring attention deficits, as in autism, both as a diagnostic tool and treatment follow-up tool, emerged as a strong imagined application. That made the technology real for potential users, allowing them to effectively evaluate a specific product concept. Calibrate your INR activities according to their commercial relevance. Strive for quick, inexpensive, no answers. In my experience, it's remarkable how often opportunities imagined by innovators in industry are rendered valueless by interactions with a few prospective users. Getting quickly to know is every bit as important as identifying and valuing potential home runs. At the risk of overemphasis, nothing is more important than a fit-for-purpose staff. Hire them, engage them, and encourage their professional growth. No permanent staff can address all potential licensing opportunities. Don't hesitate to seek outside capabilities and counsel when justified. Consider engaging. I'd be pleased to provide customized guidance that you may require. Just write or call. I'll quickly let you know if I can help. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your attention. Obviously, this version of my presentation has been pre-recorded, so I can't open the floor to questions. But if you'll give me a call or send me an email if you have some particular issues you'd like to talk about, I'm very pleased to do that. Thanks again.